All right, so with our handsome Mr. Winston, ready, sir? So I wanted to warm up with our usual, so maybe work in a couple find its with orientation back to me. And then from there, we'll do a little bit with, ready, find it, with how toys can also motivate other skills. So ready? He's almost done. He says that was a bigger one. We had to jump up. So I know for Mr. W, nice. You did send him with his lunch portion, but then I didn't see any other training treats for him. So hopefully it's okay. He's having a couple of mine. I know for some, they have sensitive tummies. So definitely packing stuff that they can have, that they do well with, and then their digestive system can also tolerate is going to be important. I think Mr. Handsome says he'll take whatever he can get. He's not a fussy man. So when working with our handsome guy, we might just warm up a little bit with some lovely loose leash walking. Yes. So even though, again, I don't have his gear on, just like I did earlier with Mr. Z, a lot of times if you're finding that gear sometimes gets in your way, or sometimes it's just one more thing to think about, I like to warm up first without equipment, get them kind of in the groove, yes, and then feed for the responses you'd love to have happen again. So remember that all of these great skills do have an account attached. So if you're finding, ready, find it, that they're not doing as well with one behavior or one skill set compared to another, nice job. Then think to yourselves, how much have we actually practiced that skill? Have we been able to help generalize them? And I know we were discussing this a little bit earlier with Mr. Z. And then also, how many deposits have you placed into that account? So a lot of times, nice job, Sarah. He's like, I didn't notice where that last one went flying, but that's okay. We'll go find that bad boy later. So the benefit of working through some of these practice moments is it helps your puppy get into the groove of what to know, what to expect, and what's being asked of them. So again, we'll do another little find it, and then we'll go again. Winston, come. Yes. So we're just getting in the groove. We're going to also practice a bit with toys and how toys can also build engagement with you, redirection from the environment. Maybe if he tends to get frustrated, he can't go right into wrestling with his sibling, or he sees a distraction and it's something that you're not going to be able to go and engage with. Play can be a really great way to redirect that energy that would be turning into frustration and sometimes even reactivity. And then you can redirect it onto a better option. So this doesn't mean go bring him somewhere hard and then somehow magically try to get him to check in by doing some play. Play, just like with every other skill, we have to build into the pup and make sure that it seems reinforcing to them. So there are a lot of moments where we might be like, well, we have, food, or we have a toy, but then the dog doesn't touch it. So either right there, it doesn't seem that reinforcing to them. Maybe the value is not high enough for the difficulty of the work or the environment. Or if they're not going for food or their usual skill set or their playtime, it's more than likely the environment or the setup has gotten way too difficult and maybe stressful or too arousing, and now the babe cannot function. So remember, if you're not getting the greatest responses, and the heat just popped back on again, so a little noisy. So if you're not getting the greatest responses, have you actually been able to show your babe what you'd rather versus just kind of getting upset at the things they're doing from our perspective wrong? So I know we dove into this a little bit earlier, so I would recommend for all of the gorgeous guys and gals, we have 3 boys, 1 little girl. So I would highly recommend is to watch all of the videos if you can. If you really would rather just only watch your own, dropped it. There we go, find it, ready? So if you'd only really rather watch just your videos of your pup, that's fine. But remember that a lot of times I might start with one and work through different topics that maybe all of them are having struggles with. And then you may find that there's some more information in one video versus your video. And when you put them all together, it's more fluid and makes more sense. So I would recommend to start at the top of the list and work your way down, because it's typically going to be, again, from the first video on the list to the lower videos are the later videos. So ready, find it. So, but they will all be, again, I know these boys like Mr. Handsome over here and Miss S and Mr. T, they are all newer to the program, where Zeus has been doing this for a little while, and he's not, again, a novel friend to the video content. Nice. But if you have any trouble finding any of the materials, let me know. I did mention earlier, I am going to be sending an email along with all of the class materials. Some of them will be a little bit of a retouch base for some of the students, because it's materials they would have either gotten from a one-on-one or a previous group class. So ready? Nice job, Winston. So right here as Mr. W re-hones in on me from those lovely find its, he's doing a really nice job working his loose leash walk-in. So if you're not getting behavior like this from your babe, have you by accident maybe been really confusing? So we a lot of times say things over and over. We tend to ask for things and then maybe not reinforce them. We also try to ask for the big boy skill or big girl skill right when we need it. So remember how I mentioned a little bit earlier with Mr. Z is if you don't know the dance moves and now you're going up on stage and you're hoping you're going to go well, it's more than likely not going to be the prettiest thing you've ever done. So make sure that when you're working with your gorgeous guy or gal, have your beauties had the chance to practice and rehearse it in a calm setting to then build it into a harder situation. Nice. Right there, I'm going to send him away. So to keep loose leash walking more entertaining for this handsome guy, notice how sometimes I send him away and then I feed him for coming back into my space. Then we might go right back into a with me or let's go. I do in the beginning like to use my hand as a target. So I don't know if you can see now that he's on my side here where I use my hand and it keeps him kind of locked and loaded next to my side. If you ever feel like you're getting drunk, and I mean by looking down at your dog as you're moving forward, I would start to look ahead and pick focal points to stare at or gaze at. So if let's say, for example, you're heading towards your mailbox, the pup gets ahead of you and you do a U-turn or a change in direction, and excuse me, now your babe is next to you again, that would be the moment you could look down and feed them. You will, for example, I'm just breaking up some of my snacks that are a little bit too big. So you will, for example, when you're practicing, if you're always looking down, you're either not going to notice the environment or you could trip and fall or maybe walk into something. Nobody's done that before. Ready, front? So I would highly recommend to look around and you'll either see your puppy blow past you or you'll feel them get ahead or you'll see them with your peripheral vision doing other things. So your best bet is kind of get their attention. You might say, with me, let's go, heel, whatever slogan. And then you can start like heading towards something and then you could feed them for being next to you. And then you could again, ready, let's go, or with me, or heel, and then yes. So you also want to sometimes mark behavior. If you forget here and there, not the end of the world, just make sure that what you're marking or feeding for, you'd like to have happen again. So what I mean by that is in the situation, he's sneezing, so he's having a good time, is if by accident I fed my dog here, and I didn't want him in front of me, he might think that might have been the spot you'd like. So if you're working with loose leash walking, I'd recommend to feed by the leg. So that way that becomes the place to acquire your paycheck. Oh my goodness, good sneezes. Oh my gosh, such a good boy. So remember that when your babe is sneezing up a storm, they're actually having a really good time. So it's one of those weird dog behaviors where he's like, where'd it go? You have to go find it. Ready? Find it. So typically when your dog is sneezing, obviously they can't have regular sneezes too, but a sneeze typically means they're super excited, they're really interested in what's going on, and they're probably playing. So a lot of times when they're sneezing during play, it means that they're play fighting, not real fighting. So the little sneezes and snorts and snuffs that they kind of make, those are actually quite lovely when you do see them. So right here, he's a little distracted. There's a crumb underneath one of the chairs, and he's gonna make it, he says, to, oh, bonk. He says, maybe I found the chair too. Ready? Winston, come. Poor guy. He says, those chairs came out of nowhere. Good job. So we'll do another little find it. So I wanna practice now doing some of these skills, but instead of feeding with food or reinforcing with food, is to reinforce with toys. So I know Mr. Handsome sometimes has a hard time letting go of things, and he sometimes runs into some resource guarding. So remember that if your babe can't practice with things they're allowed to have and building associations that letting go is either not the end of the game, not confrontational, and could actually be beneficial, then these would be games that I would start practicing with things he should have, and then you could always rotate to other behaviors like we mentioned earlier. So let's say, for example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to first send him away so I can get him distracted, and I'm going to see if I can use my toy as a way to bring him back into my space. So ready? Find it. So I tossed a few snacks over that way. I'm going to grab one of my toys and then see if he can, he might beat me to it, and then see if before he gets too distracted or comes my way, I'm going to go, Winston, come. Yeah. Nice job. So for coming when called, we're going to go right into playing. So you guys may find squirrels are more entertaining. The environment's much more stimulating. We become sort of the boring anchor at the end of the leash. So if that's been happening by mistake to your relationship, this doesn't mean that, of course, we might be cooler one day compared to, let's say, a deer. But if we don't practice generalizing coming into our space as being like a great option, the rest of the world is probably more reinforcing than we are to our dog. So make sure that you have some great value behind you as well. And then a great way to build it is to do it in softer bubbles and then build into those harder environments where normally your babe would be not successful. So, but remember, the more he practices something, the better he's getting at it. So if we are doing, as I call, window shopping, like he's looking out the window, woo, 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 as things are passing by, he's going to start to think that barking is what made it go away, or that barking gave him an out. And now that becomes the thing we do when we go outside of the home too, when we see something that's a little bit stimulating, overwhelming, or scary. So I'm not saying dogs shouldn't bark. It's super normal. But there's moments where barking, again, is communication, and they're telling you maybe how they're feeling at the moment. So right now we've got this awesome toy. We're playing, we're tugging. I'm going to see if I can do a little, ready? Winston, drop it. Yes. So I'm going to feed him for that. Good job. Ready? I'm going to feed him a few reps. So there's value. Ready, Winston? Nice. In being near the toy, but letting go, and I didn't instantly take the thing from him. I might go, you ready? He's like, yes, and we'll go get it again. So having the toy come on and off with sort of engagement of woohoo and then simmering down will be also helpful when things in the environment become really stimulating. So I know we did talk a little bit about this last week too for him, which he's doing a real nice job with some of this play. Nice. So let's say, for example, maybe your pup, as opposed to eating other things on the floor on your walks, you could bring a toy and now you could meander together. Sometimes some of the puppies like to carry a toy while they're meandering. And that could be a great way to replace that mouthy behavior onto something that's appropriate, versus like a stick or something dangerous or something you'd rather have them not grab, like maybe trash or roadkill. So we might go again. Ready, drop? Yes. If, let's say, he has a harder time relinquishing, I like to do drop its, but with a find it. So that way we're helping him move from the item. We may also find for him is playing with two toys to be another great option. So with, for example, Mr. Handsome, maybe we'll grab our other little toy, so another little tuggy. And I know we did this a little bit too with like little Miss S. She also really likes to play. So again, we're going to go ahead and offer our new friend. So I'm still holding the other one, but it's gone limp. So now again, this one is alive. This is the new friend to yank and pull and bite on. Good job, mister. So he's like, this is the greatest day of his life. Go get that bad boy. So you can see that for Mr. W, play is super motivational. He really has a good time while he's playing. If, again, he doesn't always get to play with you guys and his older dog at home is not a huge fan of his antics, I would recommend to set aside some time for you guys to play together, and maybe the other older dog does something else. So that way they can almost take turns practicing individual skills depending on what they need. So right now the toy's going to kind of go limp. I'm going to show him the next one and we're going to rotate. So now again, my other toy is off in the distance. He's like, lady, I caught it, but halfway. It's partially on his back. There we go. Go get that bad boy. So he can then practice grabbing and biting, shaking, tugging, all these natural puppy and adult dog behaviors. And now he's doing it on the appropriate item, and you're using it to build connection with you. Because again, even though he could go play all by himself with other toys, that's fine. But a lot of times then there's no value in doing it with you. So I would recommend sometimes self-play is fine. He can go and do his own thing with his own tuggies and whatever he has that's safe for him to do so. And then otherwise, you could go ahead and build in some of these skills with you being part of the equation. So again, we might go ready, Winston, drop, and then go get it. So now we can go ahead and exchange. Woohoo, nice job. And we're going to do a figure eight too, like we did last time with Miss S. So sometimes you can kind of woohoo, rotate. Don't make it so hard that, again, I know we mentioned with Miss S last week that it's unattainable. I want him to think that it is easy enough to play with me, where it's nice and it's enriching and it seems like a good idea. So this is really pretty. So now again, we're tugging, we're wrestling. He's a wild man. We're going to go into the next little friend and we'll see if he's interested. So right now the other one is still right there just doing its thing, but now this one's going to start wiggling. If he gets a little stuck, notice how I'm not saying anything over and over. We tend to, as people, constantly talk, if you haven't noticed. And a lot of times our talking just becomes background noise. So if he's not as good at understanding what the heck we're saying verbally, let him figure it out physically by doing it with food, toys, or the environment or different items. And then as he starts to get more reliable with the letting go, you could start to put the cue word to it. So it could be drop it, out, give. It wouldn't be leave it, because again, leave it's are for yucky, no, leave it items. So off limits. So again, we're playing. He's doing a very nice job. So let's say, for example, he's been doing so nice with some of this engagement, and notice how he's able to go from one to the other, and letting go hasn't equaled bad stuff. So a lot of times this can build up value, ready, go get it, in relinquishing an item for later. So let's say, for example, he's tugging, he's playing. I'm just gonna put the other one in my pocket. I would recommend places that you have pouches can be helpful. I even have a training vest that, of course, I just keep forgetting to like maybe wear, because then you can hide stuff in lots of pockets there. So right here, we might go ready, drop, and I'm gonna go into a nice big find it with a lot of little extra tidbits. So almost like the pinata. The pinata just broke, and you're stopping what you're doing here to go grab all your candy. So you're creating value in the let go. So now, let's say, for example, I'm just gonna put one of the toys back for a second so I don't have as much bulk in my sweatshirt. So let's say here's gonna be my motivation for staying nearby. He's like, yes. So I don't care if dogs jump up on me. It's not my thing, like I don't care. But remember that jumping tends to be, again, your babe is overwhelmed. They're excited, so we're getting sneezing again. So right now, my motivation for him is my tuggy toy. And we're working a couple lovely moments. Oh, there's the sneezing again. Oh, greatest day ever. So I'm working a little bit with this loose leash walking, and then I might go, good, and then into play. So typically when I go to reinforce, like for example, with toys versus food, if I forget, again, my brain also melts at times, is you would want to have a different slogan that means here comes a toy reinforcer versus here comes a food reinforcer. So typically, he's like, this is amazing, is I tend to use good for when I have them grab for a toy. Ready? Drop. Nice. So when I have him go and he's going to get reinforced with this item, I would say the GOOD and then release the item so we can go play. So I'm going to go ready with me. We're going to start walking. If it's easier, you can hold the item in the side you'd like your puppy on. If, for example, that is too challenging, you could have it on the opposite side. If your pup is jumping a lot, we may want to work on some more practice with on-off switches. Because if, for example, your babe is really eager beaver, ready? He's like, yes, I am. So we're going to do a couple more little laps and then say, good. And now the toy comes out and we play. Go get that bad boy. So when you're practicing, if you're finding he is very mouthy, very jumpy, he could be already overtired or too stimulated. So remember, if your babe is getting way too woohoo, we don't want to keep going to the point where your puppy almost becomes just an alligator with no brain. So over arousal can be too hard for some. So this is where we want to practice getting into that kind of sort of exciting spot and then come back from it. So like right here, I might go, ready, Winston, drop. Yes. And then practice having a little Zen moment where he goes and takes a little breath. Then we might go, ready, sit. He's like, my brain's slightly melted. So if we can get a little sit from him, I might even use the toy. Yeah, what a good boy. And then I'm going to go ahead and go, good. And then we can go right into playing. So having him practice sitting or maybe doing loose leash walking or doing a few skills and then you reinforce with toy play is really motivational for a lot of puppies because this is so much more fun than just nonchalantly getting a food item put into your face, though I would again be fine with it. But if you find that your babe likes food that moves, food that they chase, food that they catch, that is so much more reinforcing than just here's food right to your face. So right here, we're gonna go drop. Yes. And I go ahead and feed for that. So eventually I don't bring the food right up to him or I do the throwing. I go ahead and maybe start to ask for my drop it, give, or out, and then go from there. So let's say I want to work on recalls with a toy. Maybe you have your toy hidden. Maybe you do a find it, get them up and wiggling. When they go to disengage from you, right here, we could go, ready, Winston, come. Yeah, nice job. And we go right into some play. So playing is a really nice motivator. And for a lot of dogs, this is so much more fun than, again, that stagnant way of reinforcing at times. Though don't get me wrong, I like to rotate. What a smart boy. So we might go again, ready? Drop. Yes. And so right now, the drop, give her out, I'm feeding for it. Eventually he might be able to let go and then we play again. But if we're not to that level yet, remember, take your time and build in this understanding. So right now we're doing a little bit more with our loose leash walking. We're meandering through the environment. If let's say you weren't getting this type of focus once more, we might need to build in this, again, learning or training history. Good. And now again, the toy is alive and we caught that bad boy. Nice. What a smart boy. But he is really doing a gorgeous job in the program. So I'm very proud of Mr. W. Good job. Plus he's super fun to play with. So he's got a lot of really nice drive. You know, and that's, I think, the poodle within, they tend to be very sporty, which is nice. Good job. Wild boy. So again, right here, we might go ready, drop. Oh, he's so close. Yes. So even for right now, if I'm using my hand as almost that visual, he's like, lady, I'm ready. So if let's say he gets a little excited, we're going to do some more working, a little bit of walking. Nice. But you'll see that I'm never scolding for like a mistake. So if my dog jumps, if my dog goes to grab for something, if they didn't hold a position, you don't ever see me getting mean, agitated, or like trying to prevent it by going, or, you know, whatever it might be. The problem with always micromanaging, yeah, good job, good boy, is the problem there is you might always need to be like that nag, or your babe might start to ignore you because all you ever do is blab at them and they have no idea what you're talking about. Two, if let's say we're using a lot of correction, remember that we mentioned this a little bit earlier. Yeah, smart boy. Is your dog won't realize of what you're saying you don't love. They're just going to find that at certain points while you're practicing, you're around them, we become unpredictable and scary. So remember, getting agitated, and I get it, like I sometimes can lose my temper and get overwhelmed and myself, you know, become almost triggered because I'm overstimulated, I'm tired, I have my two wild children also, you know, yelling at me at the same time. So I sometimes have to take a moment, pause, and just take a break and walk away or do something that's going to help me kind of decompress. Because if you're just not feeling your training for the day, don't bother. So, right, we'll do a little sit. He said, my brain's melted. You got to do, oh, very nice. So right there, good. And if you're just not feeling it, give your dog other venues that might be sort of a pacifier for that day. So maybe you've got special chews. You have frozen instead of side. Maybe instead of working big boy skills, you just work a little bit of play with exploration and sniff walks in the yard. But if you ever have a cruddy day and you're just not feeling it, it is important to sometimes just have, you know, mental health days and make sure that you're not going into a moment with your dog where you're already not ready to take it on. Because I know it can get frustrating. We are but humans. And the way we deal with sometimes pressure or feeling overwhelmed isn't always really healthy on our end either. So if we sometimes have a hard time regulating our emotions, imagine how it feels for them when we don't understand most of the time where they're coming from. So remember how I mentioned, think of your dog as a furry little exchange student. So since he doesn't understand what's expected of him verbally, physically, or culturally, a lot of times what he is going to be doing is natural responses to fear, frustration, excitement in a dog way. So remember, there's no right or wrong. Dogs are not moral. Whatever they do either has a moment that makes them feel better, be it safety, an enrichment moment, an activity, or a reward they would like to gain in some way. Winston, come. So if, again, you are finding certain things to be really challenging, take a pause, evaluate the setup, see, can I set up my dog for greater success by sometimes just simply using management? So I'm going to take a little break. Oh, he's like, I dropped one over there. So let's say, you know, prevention, like we mentioned a little bit earlier for Mr. W with his sibling, is to give them both their own bubbles and then rotate through the two dogs. Or for example, maybe there's moments where, okay, he doesn't know the skill or she doesn't know the skill or we're not there yet. Don't keep setting them up where the only option is to rehearse the stuff you don't like. So even though it might be natural dog behavior for him to sweetly assault his older sibling with trying to wrestle with her, but she says, ew, then those are moments where even though you might be squealing in the distance saying, no, off, down, stop it, knock it off, he might think you're just barking with excitement as they're all wrestling or as he's wrestling. So make sure, ready, Winston. Nice, great name recognition. So right there, beautiful. So we might go again with me and do a little bit more with our loose leash walk-in. Just want to make sure I couldn't remember. Pretty sure that the mic was on, and it is. So right here, yes. So marking behavior we'd like to have a happen again, but reinforcing through food would be my yes. And then reinforcing through toys, I typically try to use my good as here comes the toy as the reinforcement versus a food reinforcer. Nice, Winston, come. He's really doing a very nice job. What a smart boy. So remember to sometimes keep things engaging by creating movement, by creating different ways to deliver your food. If we are not so intriguing, remember that a lot of times there's really almost no value to your pup to do what you're asking. So if we're anticipating the dog is going to do something because we said so, that's like your boss saying, hey, great job working because I said so, but I'm not going to give you anything in return for your hard efforts. So remember, we're going to anticipate getting something as a reinforcer for the hard efforts we're putting in. Obviously, with dogs, eventually they are not the greatest at figuring out when there's always a paycheck coming or not, or how much. So I would highly recommend to eventually you would do intermittent reinforcement. But for right now, since this is all very new and we're generalizing the skills to different people, different environments, different distraction levels, this is when you're going to have to help your dog by keeping your end consistent as the world around him is constantly changing. So, but for Mr. W, we'll give him a little breather from some of these skills and we'll work a few more in just a moment. You want to find it? Nice. But Mr. W is doing a really nice job. So we'll give him a little break from this and then continue.